So as it turns out, when it comes to the main villains of the Arrowverse, there's a lot of things about them that I could rank in a video, which you probably already noticed on my channel in like the last month or so. I still have a couple more videos to do in terms of the main villains, and in this video, I will be looking at all of the final fights between the main hero and the main villain. I might even do the same thing for the first fight, so let me know in the comments down below if that's something you want to see, because that's honestly something that I might do. I mean, I probably will. But as for the final fights, it's the climax to their rivalry, the big finishing fight scene that we see in the finale of the season, and sometimes they're pretty good. Honestly, looking at the list, like over half of them are not very good, but the ones that are good are pretty damn exciting. I'll rank all of these fight scenes based off how good they are, how good they look, or usually if it's on Arrow, then how well they're choreographed. If it's on any other show, then it's typically CGI that hopefully looks pretty good. So with all of that in mind, let's start the list with number 20.
Finish it off, John.
Gladly. And say this goodbye. Take cover.
So I don't really know if I should have put this on the list at all. It's not really much of a fight scene. It's really, there's like a play or something. Honestly, it just came out a couple weeks ago. I already don't remember if it was like a musical number or a play. But there was then the trick where Neuron killed Nate, where he thought he was killing Constantine, and then Constantine just destroyed Neuron pretty easily. It wasn't really much of a fight at all. But the reason I'm putting it at the bottom of the list, despite the fact that it's not really just a fight, is because if we count the scene where Constantine kills Neuron as a fight, then that is one of the most one-sided fight scenes I've ever seen, and it's the death of Neuron that comes away too easily. Constantine just literally kills him with one single spell, making the entire season feel like, why was there any threat at all? So that's what I'm counting for the fight scene for this villain. I've talked about this fight scene on so many occasions, but it's typically on the bottom of the list, but it was actually overtaken by Legends of Tomorrow Season 4's finale fight scene, but this is just so bad. The two main characters that are fighting here of Oliver Queen and Damien Darhk are just punching each other. Damien Darhk's powers are depleted, so he doesn't have his magical abilities, but both of these characters are very skilled fighters. Oliver Queen has been trained, he was training on an island for 5 years, he was trained by Malcolm Merlin and also Ra's al Ghul for a while. Damien Darhk is like 200 years old or something like that, 150 years old, and he has League of Assassins training, but these characters literally just punch each other. It's like a boxing match. It's nothing but punching, which is really, really boring for a superhero show, especially for the season finale fight scene, which is why I hate this scene so much. This fight scene just looks so bad. It's just aesthetically, it looks terrible. I think it's also a very one-sided fight because Supergirl we've been told she's way more powerful than not only Rhea, but basically everybody else in the universe. So it's not really much of a fight. But these very powerful characters of a Kryptonian and a Daxamite, their punches don't seem to really land. They don't really have that much force to them. It's really lame. It looks really bad. It sounds really bad. Everything about this fight is really, really bad. Landing it very low on the list.
An alien hand cannon.
As much as I love Lex Luthor as a villain, and as much as I think that this finale is easily the best one that Supergirl has ever had, this fight between Supergirl and Lex Luthor is not very good at all. There's nothing interesting about it. I mean, like an air fight between the Lexosuit and Supergirl, that could have been interesting. Maybe they could have saved up some CGI to make that happen, but there really wasn't much of it at all. I mean, Lex Luthor didn't really wear his Lexosuit until right at the end when it was destroyed by a single blast of heat vision, which that part of it really bothers me. I mean, the Lexosuit is typically typically made deliberately to stand toe-to-toe with Superman, and although it is typically defeated, how can it be defeated by one single heat blast or a heat vision blast from Supergirl, who I guess is a little bit more powerful than Superman in this universe, but still, it should be able to go toe-to-toe with any Kryptonian, and it just doesn't. And so that part of it, as well as the whole thing not looking very good and not being special at all, it makes for a pretty bad final fight. This fight, which actually includes Martian Manhunter and Indigo as well, gets a couple points for not looking that bad at all. The reason it's so low on the list is because I didn't really care about anything that was going on. I mean, I think Martian Manhunter versus Indigo, that part of the fight wasn't bad at all, but there was absolutely no intensity or no real conflict here that I cared about. I mean, there was absolutely nothing. I think the Heat Vision fight is pretty boring, and the way that Indigo was killed by Martian Manhunter, where she was distracted for a second, that was so stupid, and it really bothers me. On top of that, the fact that Non, I think, was killed, or at least blinded or something, by a blast of heat vision also really bothers me. It's very similar to how Lex Luthor was defeated in a very similar way. I think this final fight could have been pretty good. Like, the actual choreography, as far as I remember, is not bad at all. It's just that the fact that it's at night and Oliver is wearing his Al-Sahim costume makes it pretty hard to distinguish between Ra's al Ghul and Oliver Queen. They're wearing the exact same thing, basically. They look the exact same. It's pretty difficult to really distinguish the two and to realize who is winning or who's losing or who's landing which blow or who's having these cool moves. I really think if they just made it in the middle of the day, or if Oliver, or maybe both, if Oliver wore his Arrow costume, which I don't remember why he didn't, this could have been a pretty good fight scene. Alas, it isn't, so it's pretty low on the list.
You took my family away from me, Flash. Now what?
The finale of The Flash Season 5 didn't get exciting at all until the Eobard escaped prison in the future. Right before that, however, there was, I guess, kind of a fight between Cicada and the Flash, which wasn't very good at all. There wasn't really much of a fight. It was just the Flash being pinned down, Excess also, and then Cicada about to kill Excess, but then Barry shoots her lightning dagger with the thing that destroyed it, or whatever. I don't 100% remember, even though it just came out. That was easily the worst part of the episode. It wasn't really much of a fight. It also was a hugely overshadowed by the fight between Reverse Flash and Team Flash, which is a lot better. But because Cicada is, in my opinion, the main villain of the season, this list doesn't really have a good showing for The Flash Season 5. The Flash against DeVoe in the Season 4 finale is quite possibly the most disappointing fight scene, for me at least. They were confined to DeVoe's mind, where instead of having one very powerful DeVoe with all the powers of the bus metas, they have a lot of DeVoes, all with just no powers at all except for the powers he had before the bus metas, which is incredibly disappointing. It was really just the Flash running past all of these powerless DeVoe copies and just running out of his mind, which I guess killed him. So disappointing, because DeVoe was incredibly powerful. It would have been really cool to see, I guess, Team Flash coming up with some sort of plan to defeat DeVoe, to have him maybe distracted by something, so the Flash can go in and, I don't know, stop him in some sort of way, even though he is incredibly powerful. That would have been really interesting. Instead, they went a very boring and a lot easier route for them to execute on the show, which is incredibly disappointing. It's not terrible, I don't think, but it's definitely very, very, very disappointing. The Legends fighting Vandal Savage in the season finale of Legends of Tomorrow has one thing going for it, and that's that the death of Vandal Savage himself is pretty damn satisfying because of how much I disliked him as a character. Not because of how much they made him to be a good villain, it's because he was annoying, and I like the fact that he was killed in the episode. The problem I have with this fight scene, other than the fact that there isn't really much for me to care about other than his death, is the fact that, for one, Vandal Savage is defeated by not only White Canary, which is a little bit less understandable than Heatwave defeating Vandal Savage, both by themselves. That really bothers me. Vandal Savage should be a Justice League level threat, and he should be extremely powerful, or at least in his fighting ability, because he's 50,000 years old. He has had a lot of time to learn how to fight, but he's defeated by White Canary and Heatwave. So that really, really bothers me. Other than that, however, it's definitely not a terrible fight scene. I just think that it's 12 on the list because everything under it is a little bit worse, but everything over it is a little bit better, some of which are a lot better. I think that the final fight between Supergirl and Reign is just okay. It's nowhere near as good as what we've seen in the past, like in the season and the mid-season finale, but it's also not as bad as some other fight scenes we've seen in other season finales of Supergirl. In fact, it's way higher than the other ones, which are very, very low on the list. This fight scene, especially the clip that I showed, is actually pretty good. I think that the fight where they fly into space, into the sky, although it is very dark and it doesn't look incredible because it is dark, I think it looks pretty good nonetheless. In general, I think Kara and Reign definitely have the best rivalry out of all of the main hero, main villains on Supergirl, making this fight at least a little bit more intense and something that I was a little bit more, I guess, involved with, but still, it's definitely not that high on the list.
You have every right to be angry.
I don't like Omega Queen as a villain, and I don't think she should be a physical threat to Oliver at all. That being said, I think this fight scene is actually very, very well choreographed, and it looks pretty good. I really like how they use the camera here. I think the fight scenes in general in Season 7 are pretty damn good, and this one is no exception. It's nowhere near as good as anything in the first 7 episodes, like in the prison storyline, but it still, I think, is a pretty good final fight between the main hero and the main villain, who shouldn't really be a physical threat at all, but this actual fight is definitely very well choreographed, and it looks pretty good. So I think that the final fight between the Green Arrow and Ricardo Diaz, or the Dragon, is pretty damn good. I think that the main thing I love about this scene is the music. It's very intense. Like, the music in the background makes this fight so much better than it has any right to be. Diaz shouldn't really be a physical threat to Oliver because Oliver is a much better fighter, and we've seen in the past the only reason Diaz ever won against Oliver is because they thought they were going to fight fair, but Diaz had a weapon while Oliver didn't. But here, Oliver is full Green Arrow and Diaz isn't, so he shouldn't really be a physical threat. But I think that the choreography and especially the music, which I just find really exciting, it really enhances the scene to the point where it's in the top 9, which I said the top 9 are, maybe even the top 10 honestly, are the good fight scenes, while everything under that aren't very good. This was a very climactic and well put together and executed final fight between the main villain and the main hero in Arrow Season 1. I really like the choreography. I think it's really good. I think that obviously the rivalry between these two characters enhances the scene quite a lot. I really like how they both use their bow and arrows. Like the scene I just showed, Oliver shoots Merlin with a bow and arrow. He catches the arrow and then it blows up in his face, literally. I think that was a pretty cool scene. I really think that like this fight scene in general, very well choreographed, and I think it's a pretty great ending to this rivalry and a pretty good fight scene altogether.
Not long.
This final fight is incredibly enhanced by the rivalry between Thawne and Barry, and also I love how they handle the speedster fight here, where they are fighting each other with the lightning going everywhere and they're like running up the walls. I really like that. I want to see more of that in this episode, but also in the season and the show in general. The reason this fight scene is lower than the season 2 and 3 fight scenes, which we will see in a second, or maybe in a minute or two, is because it's really short. It's in total like maybe 15-16 seconds long, and for the clip I used, which I usually do 15 seconds, I had to cut two things together because they keep on cutting away from it. There's not any more than 8 seconds total in a row where they show these two fighting each other, so even though that part is definitely very distracting, it's still a very exciting fight scene that it doesn't really need to be a fight scene in general, because as a whole, it's a very good ending to the episode and a very good ending to their rivalry in the season. So this final fight between the Flash and Zoom is, yes, technically just a speedster race, but I actually think that even though that is kind of a boring concept for the final fight between two speedsters, it's really what they've been doing the whole season. I still think it really works. I think it's a little bit better than the final fight we got in the season 1 finale, mostly because we got a lot more screen time with it in the actual episode. There's a little bit more like right after the race, and it's not really just a race. There's added conflict there, added intensity that if it goes on too long, it'll literally destroy the multiverse, which nobody really thought would happen. But it's not the fact that it could happen, it's the fact that there's just an added intensity there that definitely makes it a little bit more than just a speedster race. Because of that, I do really like this final fight, and I'd put it in number 6 on this list.
Do you really want to lose another one? Last chance.
Use the spear.
The fight between the Legends and the Legion of Doom in the end is not really much of a fight. Neither is it really against the Legion of Doom. It's really just against Reverse Flash or Eobard Thawne, and a lot of them at that. I even consider not putting it on the list because there isn't really much of a fight here. I also probably should have put maybe an earlier fight. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think this is the ending conflict between the Legion or the Reverse Flash and the Legends, so I think it really, really works. I think that the fact that they added so many Reverse Flashes really added the spectacle of it all. It's pretty intense, and I like the resolution to it all. How Sarah Lance just ends it all by summoning the Black Flash. That is Reverse Flash's death, so that's really after this whole scene, but I do really think it works entirely for the season finale. My favorite final fight from The Flash actually comes from my least favorite finale. Season 3's finale is not very good. It's chock full with so many stupid moments, like the death swap in the beginning, the fact that they let Savitar go to Star Labs with like no reason whatsoever, and right after this fight when Iris kills Savitar. But there's one scene that is really, really cool, and out of all the final fights in The Flash is my very favorite, and that is The Flash, Kid Flash, and Jay Garrick going up against Savitar, also with Gypsy and Vibe going up against Killer Frost in the background. I think it's just so cool. The race in the woods between Savitar fighting Kid Flash, Jay Garrick, and the Flash, aesthetically and visually, it's so well done. It looks so cool. I even really, really like the red Savitar part where Barry Allen takes over the suit. In general, I think this is the one great part of this pretty mediocre, or maybe even just okay, closer to bad finale of The Flash, with a pretty awesome final fight. This final fight between the Legends and Mullis, or the Legends coming together to create Bebo fighting Mullis, it's just so visually pleasing. I think Mullis' CGI just looks amazing in this scene. It's one of the best scenes of CGI in the entirety of the Arrowverse, especially fight scenes. It might be the actual best. I don't really know how they pulled it off. It just looks really, really, really cool. I just like everything about this final fight. I think that it really solidifies the season as a whole and how fun it was. This was basically the peak of Legends of Tomorrow, and it really started to go downhill from there as they kind of expanded with the silliness and went too far. But I think this scene really shows how good this show could have been, and how good it was, and how good it was in season 3. And I think this fight just looks really cool. It's a great way to end the season, and a great way to just kill Mullis. The season finale of Arrow Season 5 is my favorite finale of the Arrowverse and my favorite episode in general. Not a large part to do with this fight, but definitely this fight is a part of it. The build up to Team Prometheus, or Prometheus himself and Green Arrow both assembling their teams and then going head to head is just done so well. In the actual fight scene, the choreography is great. The way that you move the camera around is great. The way they switch between the present day and the flashbacks, I really love how they do that. They do that the same thing in another finale, the only season finale of the Arrowverse that we haven't gone over yet, which, spoiler alert, is going to be number 1. We will get to that in a second. I just really love how they do that, and I think that the actual conflict between Prometheus and Green Arrow here is incredible. Now, Prometheus is definitely outmatched in terms of his fighting ability, but that's not why he's such a great villain. It's really the conflict he brings within Oliver that is really climaxed in this exact scene, where I think the acting here is incredible, and you don't really say acting is great for a fight scene. It's a fight scene. You don't have to have good acting for a fight scene, but I think that is a part of the fight between Green Arrow and Prometheus, which is why I think that this fight in this episode is so good, but it is actually the second best final fight between the main hero and the main villain, and the best is from...
Oh, Sarah, how many times you gonna watch her die?
This final fight between Oliver Queen and Slade Wilson, not once, but twice, in the exact same scenes, really, it's just perfect. I think that, like I said, in the Season 5 finale, where they cut between the flashbacks and the present day, the reason this is even better is because while in the finale of Season 5, it cut between Oliver fighting Kovar, and then Oliver fighting Prometheus, and the rest of Team Arrow fighting the rest of the Prometheus' team, here it's between Oliver fighting Slade and Oliver fighting Slade, and really enhances the fight. It really enhances the rivalry between these two, where the flashbacks where Oliver is fighting Slade, it's a kind of a different rivalry where it's just what they've been through in the flashbacks, while in the present day it's what they've been through in the flashbacks and also in the present day, which really enhances the scene. The rivalry in general, it really works here. The actual fight is fair because Slade was cured of his mirror crew, so he's brought down kind of to Oliver's level in terms of how powerful they are, making the fight really, really fair for the first time in the present day in the season, which is really exciting to see and so satisfying when Oliver manages to defeat him. I don't love how Felicity is the one to cure Slade, but that's not really a part of this fight scene at all. I think in general this fight and how they handled the ending of the conflict between Oliver and Slade in this episode is practically perfect, giving it the top slot on this list. So anyway, that is my list for all of the main villain versus main hero final fights in the season finales of the Arrowverse. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what other rankings or top 10s or anything about the Arrowverse's next seasons you want me to talk about in videos in the comments as well. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.